You're listening to episode 53 of Liz's Healthy Table.
Looking for a healthy new way to feed your family without the hassle and hype? Welcome to Liz's Healthy Table, where your host, registered dietitian nutritionist Liz Weiss, serves up fresh and flavorful recipes with a tasty side of science, good nutrition, and fun. Are you and your family ready for some wholesome food that tastes great too? Don't change that dial. Your food adventure starts here.
Welcome to the podcast, everyone. On today's show, clean eating for busy families. My guest is chef, dietitian, and mom, Michelle Dudash. And Michelle is the author of Clean Eating for Busy Families, simple and satisfying real food recipes you and your kids will love. I'm having Michelle on the show because you guys have this ongoing dilemma at dinner time. You're either lacking enough time. You're either dealing with picky eaters. You're either battling the lure of takeout. All these situations, all these issues that keep coming up. And of course, everybody wants fast and easy. And so Michelle is like the perfect guest because she's been in the trenches for so many years, feeding her own family. And of course, she's a chef and a dietitian. So she knows her way around the kitchen and she knows how to deal with kids who, from time to time get a little picky. So the recipes are fantastic in this cookbook, and we're going to talk about a bunch of them. We've got a recipe for turkey, vegetable, and oat mini-meatloaves we're going to talk about. Another recipe for hoisin beef and edamame lettuce wraps. Michelle's got a recipe for these adorable fruit pizzas. You'll see them on the cover of the cookbook. We're going to talk about Michelle's pantry. What does her pantry look like? And of course, what does it mean to eat clean? What is all this clean eating all about? So Michelle's going to define that for us. And at the beginning of the show, oh my gosh, we had the best, funniest story. I asked Michelle if she could share, a fond memory or an interesting memory from when she was out working as a chef. And so she will share with us how she actually had an opportunity to make tea for a member of the British royal family. And I mean British royal family, like as in someone who's related to Queen Elizabeth. I'm not going to give it away, but we will share the full story with a fun twist in just a few minutes. Also on the show, we're going to talk about a giveaway that we're offering. So we're giving away a copy of Clean Eating for Busy Families to one lucky winner. And that winner, by the way, can be U.S., Canada, or Europe. So we're casting a wide net this week in our giveaway. So if you head to lizshealthytable.com/podcast, check out the show notes from this week's episode, and that's where you can post a comment to enter to win. And also, while you're on the show notes, be sure to download Michelle's Clean Eating Grocery List. It's a freebie, and it's available to all of you guys. Liz's Healthy Table is brought to you by my friends at superhealthykids.com, your one-stop shop for recipes, meal plans, cooking videos, and tips for feeding kids of all ages. The show's also brought to you by the Parents on Demand Network. This is an app filled with parenting podcasts like Pediacast with Dr. Mike. I've actually been on his show. Mike's been podcasting since 2006, and he covers all sorts of topics that are really important to parents and grandparents. Some recent shows include What's Up with Measles and the MMR vaccine, Teenagers and the Opioid Crisis, and dental trauma and emergency tooth care. I'm telling you, he covers it all. You can check out Pediacast by heading on over to parentsondemand.com. You can learn all about the app when you visit that website, and I hope you'll download that app to your smartphone. And speaking of smart, I can't wait for you to hear all about Michelle Dudash and her incredible family-pleasing recipes. Hey, Michelle, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Liz. I'm so excited to be here with you.
And I'm so excited to have you. And before we dig in to clean eating for busy families, I was hoping you could just tell everybody a little bit about yourself. Where do you live? How many kids do you have? What's your website? All the fun stuff about you.
Yes. Yeah. I actually live in Carmel, Indiana now. We'll just get right to that part since you brought it up. I lived in Scottsdale for 15 years, born and raised in Wisconsin, and made my way back to the Midwest. So that's been fun. I have two daughters. They're 5 and 9, Stella and Scarlett. They were actually the inspiration for clean eating for busy families. We'll talk all about them. And yeah, my website is michelledudash.com. So I have tons of clean eating recipes there, ways to link up with my newsletter and enter into the Michelle Dudash world, and all sorts of clean eating tips.
And you said you live in Carmel, which of course I would call Carmel if I was just looking on the map.
Yes. And I called it that actually. First of all, when my husband let me know that, oh yeah, we might move to Carmel, I was like, you mean Carmel? Mm-hmm. And I almost refused to call it Carmel because, I'm used to Carmel, the sound in California. And it took a few months actually of living here and getting the look from natives. But yeah, it's finally there. It's Carmel.
Carmel.
It's a suburb outside of Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you basically went from your nice jean jacket to your down jacket.
Yes. With the fake fur trim lining. Yeah.
Got to stay warm. Well, here I am in New England, and it's been one of these winters that's like, can it please get warm out? By the time this podcast runs, I am hoping it will be a little warmer, but it is what it is. We just suffer through.
It makes the summers that much better, though, don't you think?
I think so. And then we get to, have picnics and cook outside, and we like all that. So, Michelle, I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg. Like, you're a chef, you're a dietitian. Which came first?
Dietitian came first, then chef. Even though I started working in the restaurant industry when I was 14 years old. So it's like started out working in restaurants, but then when it came down to starting university, I claimed dietetics as my major. And then I just started to become, after I graduated, I became more just obsessed with like cooking. And I would read Gourmet magazine at night after work, and I'd read cookbooks like they were novels. And then I enrolled in culinary school.
Oh, and where'd you do that?
That's how I ended up in Scottsdale. Well, Arizona was first job out of college, Tucson. And then I moved immediately to Scottsdale after working a couple years to go to culinary school at Cordon Bleu College of Culinary Arts in Scottsdale.
Very good. So all these years, working in restaurants, do you have like a crazy story you can share with us? Like you always hear about these mean chef instructors or mean chefs or, a celebrity sighting or like any story that you are privy to share.
Well, of course. Well, it's funny. Okay. In restaurants, yes. I mean, I have worked with the crazy, chef yelling and screaming at the top of their lungs. When I was a private chef, one of the guests of my employer was Prince Andrew. Mm-hmm. And of course, as in the English royalty, as in Duke of York.
As in Fergie. He was married to Fergie. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So he actually was a really good friend of my employer. When I cooked, I was a private chef in Paradise Valley, which is part of Phoenix area. And he was a good friend of theirs. So one time I was cooking and he was staying in the guest house, and I was expected to prepare high tea for the guest and some other guests that were in town. So I thought, okay, no problem. I just brew a pot of tea, boom, 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 put out some pastries. That's lovely. So I brought him his tea, and I think, I didn't, back then, I was 25 years old. I guess I didn't really think about, we had this huge China pot. It probably weighed, 5-10 pounds. And I didn't realize you had to preheat the proper China teapot before actually brewing the pot. So I brought him his tea, and then later on he came in. He was so nice though. So nice. But he came into the kitchen and he's like, let me show you how to brew a pot of tea.
Oh no.
The important part was preheating the pot with hot water, dumping out that water. And then, so again, I guess now I would know that because I drank more tea, but in my 20s, I wasn't drinking China pots of tea. So that was one thing he taught me. And then, because he was so laid back. And then the next day, he's like, oh, can I get some milk? And so I was literally holding a carton when he asked that. He's like, oh yeah, just bring that to the table. He was so laid back. And my employer was completely mortified. Like, oh my gosh, it's not in the china, because we pulled out all the stops, of course, for Prince Andrew when he was in town. And he was just very laid back, really nice, and very grateful for all the service. But he did teach me how to brew a pot of tea.
I love that story. And I will share that with my husband, Tim, who's British, and he will not eat dinner off a cold plate. So even if it's salad, like you've got to warm the plates in my household. And, again, we live in New England. It's cold. My kitchen's cold. And so if you give that man dinner on a cold plate, it's like giving Prince Andrew tea in a cold pot. So I can relate.
That's good. That's good to know. My husband likes hot plates too, but he's not British, so I do not preheat the plates for him.
Oh,
But in fine dining, we do that. It is a better way to eat, I
think it is, because then your food stays warm.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. All right. So I love that story. And that leads me to my next question, where there's no segue at all, but we've got to talk about your book, Clean Eating for Busy Families. And so when I look at this book, Clean Eating for Busy Families, Simple and Satisfying Real Food Recipes You and Your Kids Will Love, my question is, what do you mean by clean eating? And why this book? Tell us what your book's about. And by the way, a reminder, we are giving away a copy, so people can kind of head on over to lizshealthytable.com to the show notes from this episode. And Michelle, I think you shared with me it's U.S. and Canada. Are we okay with Canada? And was there Europe as well?
Yeah, and the UK. You can pretty much get it anywhere.
Good. Because I think my listeners get irritated with me, like, oh, U.S. again. Come on, let's go. We need the world.
Yeah.
So
Amazon in the UK, you can get it there. I know. Yeah, it's all over.
Good. So we'll do that. So tell us about the book, and what do you mean when we hear this term clean eating? Just kind of put that in perspective.
Yeah, clean eating at its most fundamental, it's choosing whole foods in their least processed state. So foods that are closest to how they come in nature. Now, at the same time, sometimes, people hear process, process. The thing is, most foods are processed in some shape or form. So I like to explain it to people, all foods fall in this continuum, right? You pluck an apple from a tree. Okay, that's not processed. But after that, things get washed. They are stored. So different things do happen to food. So processing isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I recommend choosing foods that are less processed. Less processed foods tend to be higher in nutrients. They're barely processed, no added sugar, no added sodium, no dangerous added trans fats. There's more fiber. So you're also typically getting more beneficial nutrients in that food. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's why clean eating. So it's whole foods, real foods, least processed.
And to even build on that processed vibe, I think of canned beans. Yes, they're processed, but you can get salt-free. You can drain and rinse them. You wash away 40% of the sodium. To me, that's a really great example. Or orange juice, of a food that's processed, but it's so nutrient-rich and so versatile. So are we on the same page then with OJ and canned beans, and those are clean eating too?
Absolutely. I mean, canned foods I use all the time. And actually people are surprised by that. I think sometimes, just when you're talking about the average person, because I don't think they understand how those foods are actually made. Like with canned foods, as you probably know, a lot of those foods, they literally take the fresh food, pop it in the can, and it's cooked in the can. Very few ingredients, salt, water. So I incorporate those. And those are actually some of the staples that I recommend people use to shave down on the time spent in the kitchen. And here's the thing, and this is a big part of the book, is it's clean eating for busy families. It's getting those nutritious meals on the table, and 30 minutes or less is just the magical number. When I tell parents that it's 30 minutes or less, they just have this sigh of relief saying, oh, wow, I love 30-minute recipes. And the beautiful part is I'm kind of crazy about testing my recipes because I want them to turn out. If somebody spent all that time getting the groceries, making, it's only 30 minutes, but you know what I'm saying? You want your food to taste good after you spend 30 minutes working on it, right? So people are really relieved. Yeah.
And it's not just 30 minutes though, because you have to grocery shop. Right? Yeah. You got to get everything home and unloaded. And you got to do the dishes. So there is a lot that goes into it. So you're a stickler then when it comes to testing, because I will always say to people, like, if I buy a cookbook, I can look at it and immediately, and you're probably the same, look at it and say, ooh, that recipe's not going to work. Like, that just doesn't make sense. And so you really have to, when you're putting a book together, test, test, test.
Yeah, I really do. It's so important because I think that's important to me. I want people to trust when they see a Michelle Dudash recipe, it's going to turn out. And let's face it, we all want to feel like domestic goddesses when we put the dinner on the table, don't we? Mm-hmm. We want our family smiling. I feel so great when I cook a meal and my kids love it. I feel like I'm the mom of the year when that happens.
You score.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's happy. So how old are the girls, and what would you say, like, right now, is their number one favorite recipe from the book?
Yes. Well, okay. So 5 and 9. And it's funny, their favorite recipes change. So, of course, my daughter, my 9-year-old, her favorite recipe, I'm not going to lie, it's the fruit pizza, which is a dessert in the cookbook, it's like a soft cookie crust made with whole wheat pastry flour and low-fat milk and some other ingredients. And then it's topped with just loads of fresh fruit. And so my daughter's actually, and if you look at the cover, that is actually one of the recipes that we're preparing on the cover, on the new cover. That is her favorite, that off the top of my head. And another recipe they love is the meatloaf, but of course I don't call it meatloaf to them. I call it meatball cupcakes because everything's more fun when it's a cupcake. Don't you agree?
I do. Yeah. And so you're really, as a mom, intuitively, you're marketing good food, good nutrition to your kids by simply changing the name of it. I mean, that's like a tiny, people always say, oh, I have a picky eater. My picky eater won't eat this or that. And we've all been there, right? So like that marketing, that just little switch of a name, suddenly your child's excited. And like, what else do you do with your girls to inspire them to try new foods besides calling them fun names?
Mm-hmm. I keep it low pressure. Like when I'm eating something in the kitchen, I'm like, oh, you want to try some? And of course, sometimes they will. And then sometimes I think, kids want attention. So might make a crazy face. And I'm like, if you don't want it, you don't have to eat it. And that might be the end for that day. But then another time they'll come around. So I think just not making a big deal out of food. It's to be enjoyed, I think, is the big thing. It's to be enjoyed, and they'll come to enjoy those foods. So I think that's really important in my house. I've tried the 1 bite rule or the no thank you rule. Like when you become a mom, at least from my experience, you just see how different people do things. And for my kids, it's just, this works better for us. So
there's no one size fits all. There's no, magic bullet. And I can remember years ago when I had the Meal Makeover Mom platform, we were always talking about this no thank you bite, which was like, you take a bite and you say thank you or no thank you. And it's a fun, low key way to get kids to try new foods, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone. And so we had this mom write to us and say, I tried the no thank you bite. My son wouldn't do it. And then it turned into this whole battle. He sat at the table for hours. He wouldn't take the no thank you bite. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this has backfired, this poor mom, because she took it so seriously. And, we responded and said, you know what, if it doesn't work for you, you got to move on quickly, because there's 50, 100 things you can do, right? You can get your kids cooking with you, like the cover of your book. The kids are having a grand old time, right? It doesn't mean they're going to eat it necessarily, but you're getting them into the kitchen. So there's all these things you could do. There's no like magic bullet, I don't think. It's so individual.
Totally. Absolutely. I think, something that keeps things in perspective for me sometimes is one of my daughters, she won't eat pie. It's like, dude, you won't eat pie. Okay. So I'm not even going to worry about other things, it just goes to show you, one of the most beloved foods, pie. My 5-year-old just doesn't want to eat it. So don't get worked up about a food just because if your child doesn't want to try it. Focus on all the good things, all the nutritious foods that they love to eat, and always keep those on hand.
I want to just get back to the meatloaf and the cupcakes / meatloaf. What's in that meatloaf? Because I haven't, I've been going through your book and now I've got to turn to it. But tell everybody what's in that meatloaf to make it clean eating.
Yeah, it's filled with vegetables, but they're minced very fine. So the full title is Turkey, Vegetable, and Oat Mini-Meatloaves with Marinara Sauce. So in the book, you'll see them in these adorable little bread pans. They're mini bread pans, but you can cook them in muffin tins, as I like to for my daughter. So they're filled with mushrooms that are finely minced, There's some onion, there's some garlic. So instead of the white breadcrumbs, which are just made with white flour, I use dry rolled oats, and they go undetectable. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you're getting all that great fiber, the soluble fiber, and great nutrients in there. In terms of the meat goes, I use a lean ground turkey, or you could use lean beef.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking about those oats too, because I have a meatball recipe similar on my blog, and the oats are great because they kind of absorb the liquid. You're going to get liquid from those veggies. So I think the oats in meatloaf, meatballs, I think that's a great combo. I like that addition.
Yeah, thanks. I do that all the time. Any new recipe that I create, it calls for breadcrumbs. I usually just switch it. I mean, sometimes I'll use whole wheat panko breadcrumbs or something like that. But for this, it's like, oh, go for it. It's such a wholesome whole food. So I try to incorporate those.
So these are like little swaps, right? Little tricks. Mm-hmm. So as we're looking through your recipes, we might see like a whole wheat pastry flour instead of a white flour. We're going to see oats. So you're just saying, do what you love, but make those little tweaks, make it healthier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people love their comfort foods. Families love their comfort foods. Kids, we all love those classic recipes. Now, you'll also find totally new recipe concepts in my book. Like there's a buckwheat edamame noodle bowl that I love to make, especially on our meatless Mondays. That's totally vegan. So that's different. But yeah, there's a mix of old and new. Mm-hmm. Always made healthier.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. And you also have a recipe for hoisin beef and edamame lettuce wraps in a hurry. Mm-hmm. I love taking that Boston bib lettuce and using it as the cup and then loading stuff into it. So tell us about that recipe because it sounds so fancy. Hoisin beef and edamame lettuce wraps in a hurry. How do you make that recipe? What are the ingredients and how do you make that because it's so quick and speedy?
Yeah. Well, this was inspired when I was a private chef and they loved all sorts of Asian food, Chinese and Japanese. And so I've honed this recipe over many, many years. So first you make the sauce and that reduced sodium soy sauce. There's hoisin sauce, rice vinegar, Chinese mustard. And these are all ingredients you can find in your regular grocery store in the international food section.
Okay.
So these aren't ingredients you have to go to like a specialty market for. That's a really important concept. That's really important for me as an author of especially this topic. Everything you can find at one grocery store. Then, so you get your sauce going in a little bowl and then you sear the beef. Now with the beef, I find to get the best sear, I mean, you could season it with some salt and pepper, but really you just want your protein. In this case, it's the beef. We're using ground beef. You don't want to, if there's any liquid in the package or blood or whatever, you want to keep that out. Moisture gets in the way. I know it's like, it sounds so graphic, but let's face it. It's in the packet. Moisture gets in the way of browning and we want it to be seared. So we put that in the really hot pan and that's going to start building that great flavor. So then there's also onion, there's garlic, sesame seeds, ginger. And then I also stir in some frozen edamame. So those young green soybeans that, eat at sushi restaurants, but I recommend buying them out of the shells. Mm-hmm. You don't have to deal with that. You just throw those right in. And then there's canned water chestnuts that are chopped up. So it gives it a nice crunch. This recipe basically, I mean, if you've been to P.F. Chang's, I've basically just eaten that so many times, which it is delicious, but I've just made it my way with less sodium, no added sugar or less sugar for the home cook. And then you just, you stir in the sauce and then you serve it in the lettuce cups.
That's my kind of recipe. I love that because it's like one pan and then the presentation is so beautiful. It's just so gorgeous. I did something similar with, let's see, it was tuna. It was, I think you got these. It was this infusions, chicken of the sea infusions. And I used that, and then I added like shredded carrot and sliced bell pepper, and I just added like a little teriyaki. It was just this fun little lettuce cup. So I feel like anything goes. You can just kind of use your creativity, just starting with that lettuce cup.
Oh, for sure. And quite a few ingredients. If you don't have one or two things on hand, it's fine. It'll still turn out great. Like sometimes I don't always have hoisin sauce on hand. And you know what? You're still going to get a great flavor from the other ingredients. And like you mentioned, the shredded carrots, Mushrooms would be great in this. If you have some leftover veggies, chop those up and throw those in there. They'd be great.
Yeah, good for reducing food waste when you use leftovers. So I want to back up because I realized before we were just starting to talk about this clean eating pantry. And I think on your website, you have a free download for people, don't you? I want you to tell everybody about that.
I do. Yes. Yeah. I have, if you go to my website, michelledudash.com, there is a free download. It's my clean eating grocery list. It's the exact list of foods that I buy for my own family. These are like the staples, the workhorses of my kitchen that I always keep on hand to get clean eating meals and snacks on the table.
Good stuff. Okay. So you walk in the door, let's say you've got your pantry, your fridge and your freezer, your cupboards, you got what you need, right? You have the workhorses. So let's say you walk in. I know you play tennis, right? So you've been playing tennis or you've done a TV segment. You're having a Michelle Dudash day and your girls, everybody walks in, you pick them up wherever they've been after school. And now you got to get dinner on the table. So what are you going to make tonight with what's on hand in your kitchen?
Yes. It's going to be typically one of two things. If I had zero planning and I'm just like, what is in my freezer? What's in my pantry? One of them is a pasta for sure. My daughters love pasta. I always use a whole grain pasta. The sauce could be a variety of things, but it could be just from whole canned tomatoes that I'm whipping up. But I also use jarred tomato sauces too. Again, just looking at the ingredient list for just those whole food clean ingredients and no added sugar in your sauce. But if you look at a lot of those lists, they're as good as what you're making from scratch. And then I incorporate, usually I almost always have baby spinach on hand. So I'll saute some of that in the pan. And then whatever protein I might have in the freezer, which could be, maybe it's ground beef, maybe it's chicken thigh. I'm a big fan of chicken thigh over breast. That's a personal choice. So much flavor in that. And then whatever other vegetables I have on hand, sliced mushrooms would probably go in there. And then just load it up with some seasonings like Italian seasoning. And then I like to finish it off with a little extra olive oil.
Okay, so a pasta dish with pasta sauce and veggies and some kind of protein. And then you said you have a second go-to. What is it?
The other one is stir fry, for sure. And what I do there is, again, first figure out, and I do this often, especially when it's time to do a fridge clean out and try to use up all those random little ingredients. Pull out let's say if there's a piece of beef that I have in the freezer, I'll slice that up really thin and then sear that off. And then I always have onions on hand and garlic. So I'll get that going in the pan. And then what other veggies I have in my produce drawer, again, probably sliced mushrooms. I'll take some edamame from the freezer. I always try to keep that on hand. And then for the sauce for that, if we're talking really fast, I'll usually just use some tamari or the reduced sodium tamari, which is a specific type of soy sauce, or just good old-fashioned reduced sodium soy sauce. And then I'll drizzle it with dark sesame oil. That's another staple. It's just, that is an instant way to elevate the taste of most types of Asian recipes.
So your secret ingredient, the dark sesame oil. I want everybody to remember that. Dark sesame oil, just a little bit, right?
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
Good. Well, I like this. And that's, that's a common question I'm sure you get and that I get is I need fast weeknight dinner ideas. Yeah. And that's why I always ask my guests, if you just walk on the door, what are you going to whip up? So that's super helpful for people. It's like you're just, constantly we're offering inspiration, right?
Yeah. Oh, there's one more recipe I need to mention.
Yes, ma'am. Please do.
And it's in the book. So I know some people are like, no, I need the actual written recipe, Michelle. And I totally get that. There's a marinated chicken thigh recipe in the book, and especially when summertime is here, when I'm grilling all the time. You can bake it too, but it's 5 ingredients. It's chicken thighs, apple cider vinegar, Dijon mustard, and then a few different a seasoning blend that you like an all-purpose or a Cajun, and then some oil. And you can either just marinate it for 10 minutes, or you can, of course, do it the night before. It's going to have even more flavor, but that is a staple. I make that at least once a month.
And then you grill?
Yeah. In the summer, I definitely grill it. And in the winter, I'll just bake it in a pan And it has so much flavor. It's the simplest list of ingredients, but the apple cider vinegar just really kicks up the depth of the dish, but it's not so acidic like, say, white vinegar, It just really works.
I love chicken thighs, the boneless, skinless, in the slow cooker with barbecue sauce and just let it rip. And then you could do like a pulled chicken with that. I mean, you could do pulled pork, but I usually do pulled chicken, but use the chicken thighs. So flavorful, right? Compared to chicken breast. I'm with you. We're aligned,
Yeah,
Michelle. We are
totally.
aligned. Thighs over breasts for chicken. Okay. So we've talked a lot about main meals. And I'm just sort of curious about your snacking philosophy. Like mine is that snacks should be mini meals, right? They should fill in the nutrient gaps in your day. Mm-hmm. So like, what's your best tip on a healthy snack for kids? Whether it's, in the morning, in the lunchbox, or when they come home after school.
Yeah. I mean, I keep all sorts of things on hand. I keep whole fruit. We're always looking for packaged foods, but whole fruit is a great clean eating convenience food. I always go with the season. So right now, it's a winter time right now. Well, no, it's spring, isn't it? Time flies.
Hard to believe.
Okay, so early spring. Citrus is in peak season. I always keep those on hand. Summer, once that rolls around the corner, we have all of the berries. I mean, it's so simple to just wash those as soon as you get them home. Keep them in the fridge. So when your kids are home, I take out the entire container, put it on the counter, and they can just have as much as they want. And they go through so much fruit. I also recommend having cheese sticks on hand. Hummus is another staple snack. It's made with chickpeas, right? It's the first ingredient. Counts as a vegetable. We got some protein in there. My girls just love that. And I'll always keep seeded crackers on hand. Those seeded crackers give you those extra fiber and good fats, and they're so crunchy and yummy. Hard-boiled eggs, keep those on hand at all times. I always boil a batch for the week. Keep those on hand. It's great protein, and my kids love that. Natural microwave popcorn. I always recommend keeping on hand. Sometimes people think, popcorn it's a whole grain, as you know, of course, Liz. But a lot of people, I think, are surprised by that. And now, of course, you can just pop your own in a paper bag. But now there are some great ones on the market where you look at the ingredient list and it's just oil and salt. So super convenient. My kids they make probably a bag almost every day. Raisins are a great one. It's a dried fruit with no added sugar. My 5-year-old loves the raisins. I buy the little mini boxes of those and she just loves that. So that counts as a serving of fruit. Great fiber. And then nuts. Nuts are a huge staple in my house. Cashews, my daughters love. They love pistachios. I always have, at least 3 different types of nuts for snacking on hand. Because you can grab and go with those too, with a lot of these foods. But keep those in jars in the pantry.
I love, by the way, the shelled pistachios.
I love
They're
those.
so
That's
convenient. Yeah, they're so easy. Yeah,
I know.
There's just so many. Yeah, I think we get all wrapped up in I need a recipe, I need snacks, but there's so many just whole foods, clean foods, as you say, that we can just grab. And they're right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And I know, there are great snacking recipes out there. I mean, I'm a chef and a dietitian, right? When you look at the time in the day, I focus on getting that really yummy dinner on the table. And then snacks are you should be eating a snack because you're really hungry. And so you don't have to spend time making some elaborate snack. I mean, if you want to, that's great. I would like to come over to your house if you're making those. But I keep it really simple when it comes to snack time.
Mm-hmm. The other day I was doing a kids cooking class. I work with a program called Kids Cooking Green. And I always like to take colorful vegetables and I shape them into a big rainbow. I just have a big cutting board. And so I shaped them into a rainbow by color. So bell peppers sliced up and cucumbers and carrots. I use the purple carrots for the purple part of the rainbow. And then I have hummus or a dip in the middle. So I had offered to the kids at the beginning of the class just some plain vegetables because I had a few cut up ones left over and I wasn't ready to present the rainbow. Anyway, nobody wanted. They all I don't want it. And then I bring out the rainbow with the dip, the hummus dip, and it disappears.
Yeah.
So back to even what you were saying before about the meatloaf, that you turn into the little meatloaf cupcakes. It's just marketing, and you make it fun and it looks delish, it's colorful, and then they all want it. And the hummus is like total win. I agree with you. Like, it's like, I want more. And, and you could even dip crackers in it. Like you mentioned, the seeded crackers would be great. Any veggie. Yeah, hummus is like magical.
It is. It's so good. You can buy the sugar snap peas. Like, there's zero prep with that. You can buy I just got a bag of they call it the mini sweet bell peppers. Mm-hmm. They're like those 2 or 3 bites. Like,
yep,
you don't have to do anything to that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I totally agree. Put it on a platter, make a little mini veggie tray, and they will love it.
They do. It's so pretty. Hard to resist. So, we talk a lot about kids on the show and families. And I feel like, we talked about Tim and Prince Andrew earlier in the show. And I feel like we give our husbands short shifts sometimes, or our spouses, our partners. And so I'm curious from your book, if there's a recipe in there that would do double duty as a family dinner, but maybe also as a romantic dinner, like a date night kind of a recipe for you and your partner. So what might that be?
Yes. Well, I have a chicken piccata recipe in the book that it's a very popular recipe. It serves actually a few functions because chicken piccata, right? It is romantic. I mean, it's got this delicious, silky, lemony sauce. It has the capers, which are optional. I realize not everyone will eat capers. My husband and I love capers, but it really elevates the dish. So it's just, you take your chicken breast, you pound it out very thinly, and then you bread it. So I keep it light with just some whole wheat flour. You can even use almond flour, and that's a little option that I give you in the sidebar for that recipe. You can bread it with almond flour. And then you're just lightly sauteing it in some olive oil. And then you add your sauce. You create your sauce with some fresh lemon juice, some chicken broth. I like using the bone broth now. That's a great option that you can just pick up from the store now. Gives it a little more body. And then it's just finished with just a little bit of butter for flavor. It's maybe like a teaspoon, and it really makes a difference.
So that's your romantic dinner. I like that.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I love capers, so I will check that out. My husband doesn't eat chicken. We tend to go the fish route. I think that might be nice with even shrimp or something. Sounds like you could adapt it, perhaps.
Oh, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That would actually be delicious. I mean, hello. Lemon caper sauce with shrimp. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
There's also a halibut recipe in the book. That's also very romantic. It's halibut en papillote, which is French for in paper. So it's like a paper pouch and very easy to scale for 2 people instead of 4 people. Mm-hmm. I love that recipe.
Good stuff. All right. Date night it is. And then, of course, we have to end our meal with a sweet treat. Well, we don't have to, but we could. And you've got these wholesome sweet treats at the back of the book. What makes them wholesome? Like, share a recipe from that chapter and tell us what the secret ingredients are that make it healthier and make it wholesome.
Yes. One of my favorites that I just had recently was my peanut butter brittle bars with a dark chocolate drizzle. So it's like part cookie, part candy. They're addicting. So the crust is, you take whole grain cracker crumbs. So you could use the whole grain cracker crumbs if you'd like. Whole graham crackers are actually made with like half whole grain anyway, just the regular ones. There's a little bit of honey to sweeten it. And then of course, you got to have a fat in there to keep it all bound together and delicious. So I use 3 tablespoons butter, or you could also use coconut oil. Then the filling is it's a ton of nuts. Now in this particular recipe, I use dry roasted peanuts, but it's very flexible. You can do a mix of different types of nuts, like cashews and almonds would be a delicious addition to that. It's very interchangeable. And then there's just a little bit of coconut milk in there, a little bit of butter, a little bit of honey. And then you bake that so it bubbles. So the top part, the peanuts, it's almost like a candy. It almost gets crunchy. And then the crust is the cookie. And then you drizzle it with dark chocolate. So you just take some dark chocolate chips, melt those very carefully in your microwave, and you drizzle that on top.
Oh, yum. I'm on that page right now. That looks so good. Oh,
yeah.
Gosh, yum, yum. And the other thing I love about the book, I have to say, is that you have all these little tips and notes and, recipe notes and nutrition notes and clean eating notes. And I think for people who want to know a little more, why am I eating that? And why is that good for me? So the book's awesome, and it's just packed with so much great information. And I'm so excited that I finally got you on the podcast. You know, back in the day when I had Cooking with the Moms, when I had the Meal Makeover Moms platform, we were going to have you on the show and we never did. And I have been having guilt for years over that, Michelle. Like, why on earth have I not had Michelle on my podcast? And here we go. You know, the book's out and it's fabulous. So I can't thank you enough. Is there anything else you want to share? Just remind everybody how they can find you, by the way, online and on social media.
Yes. So my website is michelledudash.com. That's where you can get that free downloadable clean eating grocery list. You can subscribe to my newsletter, which is just filled with free recipes, motivational tips, and where you can find me, like in the media. And on social media, it's almost every channel is Michelle Dudash. So I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. So I would love to hear from you guys. So yeah, I'd love to hear from everybody. And I could literally talk with you all day, Liz. I mean, I just love talking with you.
Well, maybe you need to come back on the podcast then.
Sounds good.
Well, we need to get you back on the podcast, which means maybe you need to write another cookbook.
Yes, I could see that happening.
You going to do it?
Yeah, I think so.
You're going to do it?
I have to. I love writing cookbooks. It's fun. I love talking about cookbooks.
So you're admitting that you're going to do it. I'm going to hold you to it. I will hold you to it.
Please do. Please do.
I always say I will never write another cookbook. It is so hard, but maybe I will. The other day, this little thing hit me in the brain, like, why don't you write another cookbook? And then I slapped myself like, no, don't do it. It's just so much work. So I commend you. I congratulate you. I love the book, Clean Eating for Busy Families. So thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on the show.
Thanks so much, Liz.
And to all of my listeners, do not forget to head on over to lizshealthytable.com/podcast. The show notes from this show will be packed with links. I'll take some photos of some of these recipes. So if you want to check them out, you could try one or two of them. If you love the show, post a review on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, thanks for listening to Liz's Healthy Table.